Hi and welcome to this video log with me, Wayne, from SwimCycleRunCoach. Well, I've got things in front of me again, which means my wife's angry because I've been spending money. But it might be good for you because I'm reviewing these, which are the Finis agility paddles. And what I thought I'd do is I thought I'd actually swim with them and compare them to the two other kinds of paddles I've got. I've got the normal kind of paddles and the Finis freestylers. And actually use my Garmin watch that I reviewed last week and actually see if there's any data that could be useful. Now, what's different about the freestyler is firstly their shape. They're actually curved. I don't know if you can see that. And secondly, they don't have any straps. What they do have is a thumb hole that fits through. And that's what, when I saw them at a gala, I thought, now that's quite clever, because when I ever get my swimmers to use paddles, I get them to put one finger in the paddle like that, so that if they make a mistake, the paddle actually comes off. And they have to recover fairly reasonably smoothly. Even if they recover wide, it's a smooth recovery. And I think that's exactly the same with this Finis freestyler. Sorry, Finis agility paddle. There's the freestyler there. They're meant to be for to promote a high elbow recovery, but I don't think it would really matter if you swam. Yeah, you could swing this quite easily. One thing I would say, I've got a little red lump on my knuckle there from pushing my thumb in too far, and I think that's something you might tend to do initially, but it's actually better just to hold the paddle just with that part of your thumb as opposed to try and shove it all the way in. That is good enough to hold the paddle. You'll actually keep it there if you're doing a reasonably good stroke. Where I did have a little problem with them initially was when I was tumble turning, because when I was tumbling I was using my hands to sort of do things, and if you use your hands to do things, they're obviously looking to come off. That you learn fairly quickly not to do. So there's an added benefit with these particular paddles in that they will promote a better and more streamlined tumble turn when you're tumbling. So that's rather good. The set I did, I went to the pool, the set I did was normal stuff, including drills, and then I pulled 2 100s with each paddle off 2 minutes and giving myself an extra 30 seconds in between those sets when I changed paddles. The reason I gave myself 30 seconds was obviously I didn't want tiredness to be a factor in the paddles. We'll just have a look at the computer, my Garmin information, and see if there's any difference between the three. Then I'll come back and give you my impressions of what I thought about all three when comparing them. Remember, I'm pulling and I'm not swimming.
Okay, so here we are looking at the intervals for this paddle test that you see up here. The whole set was 150. I was trying to do 200, but obviously couldn't count. Then a follow-up 200. That one was front crawl, that one was front to back. Then 3 times 2 100 drills, which by round was extended shark, touch head, and finger drag. Then I pulled 3 times 2 100s on 2 minutes, giving myself an extra 30 seconds between those 3 rounds, testing each type of paddle. At the end, because of reasons I'll explain in a second, I gave the agility paddles an extra 100. Then I did a cool down. And what we're interested in here is we're interested in the sets 9 through 15. So we get a total of 7 100s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And you can see the times I did them in. Well, the agility paddles initially I was doing in 135. The second one I actually missed the button. I had done that in 122. But the reason why I was doing poorly on the first one was effectively because of those turns that I mentioned in my introduction. When I was turning, I was virtually losing the paddles. And that's not losing the paddle through poor mechanics in the swimming, but it does indicate that I actually had poor mechanics in the tumble turn, which is not as good as I potentially could be. So that's the reason for that. That actually was 132. And then I went on to the pool paddles, which are the normal style paddles that I had one finger in. I did 133 and 134. Now I felt with those paddles I had a lot more resistance than I had on either of the others. The freestyle paddle had a much less resistance than the other two, and I did 133 and 134. Now speed isn't necessarily what you're looking for in these sets, but they do indicate how efficient you're being, given the extra resistance that you're getting from the paddle. And the last 100 freestyle I did in 132, which I think is quite impressive. Not when I say freestyle, that's the stroke. This is the agility paddle in 132, and I did that because of my messing up the first two. So I think 132 was the time I was coming in there. There's no reason at all why the others shouldn't be pretty accurate. So I actually sped up on this freestyle paddle. Now, going along with my metrics here, this column here shows strokes per length, and you see that's 9999, so that's fairly even. Let's just take one of the freestyle paddles. We've got 9999, so that's just about the same. That's annoying. Let's go back to intervals. So that was number 13. And then we've got 9 and 10. We've got 10 and 11, sorry. 11 and 12, which are the pool paddles. Let's look at the faster one of those for that. And what were we doing? We were doing 8, that's efficient, 9, 10 and 8. Now I said that there's more resistance on these, and I think that shows there. Remember in the 200s last week, that third quartile was always the worst quartile. Well, when the resistance is high, that shows that that plays as well. And in the first agility paddle set, we'll take the second one there, and we'll see what that does. In stroke lengths, that's more strokes. And I think part of that is the fact that I was messing up the turns. Because obviously, in the end, I went 9999 on that once I got used to them. So you do have to get used to them. But apart from that, I think they do produce reasonable resistance. But I did feel that my hand was following a better pattern in the water with those compared to any of the other paddle. So I think the actual movement, because they're curved at the edge, the movement of water around the paddle seems to make it designed to pull a better pattern than the other paddles. If you want resistance, well, they're not necessarily the biggest resistance you can get. And I don't think necessarily increasing the size of those paddles is what we're about. Simply because that's not what they're made for. They're made for stroke correction, and that's what we do. Anyway, I'll resume this face to face. See you in a second.
So there you have it. Different effects from different paddles. These are the paddles that gave me the most resistance, and they're actually not. Well, they're just about the same size as the agility paddles. So if you want resistance, that shaped paddle is what you're looking for. These paddles, I mean, I like the thought of them, but I've never felt that these were doing what they were meant to do, which is sort of pushing you in a straight line. Perhaps that's because I have a fairly straight stroke anyway, and I come down the centre line. So those I would tend to put to one side. These, however, because of this curved shape that you see around it, I think they make you come in a better line in your stroke. So of all these paddles, these are probably the ones that I will now use more than anything. I don't need a huge amount of resistance in my stroke, and if I do, I probably would even buy bigger ones than these if I wanted to do resistance training. But I do use them for correction. As I say, don't shove your hand totally into it, because you're liable to just catch that knuckle there as you're swimming, and that's not particularly pleasant. But overall, the experience of using these, I think, is incredibly positive, and the fact that I was faster with these than any of the other paddles, and these paddles I've used quite regularly. Remember, I'm pulling, there's no kick involved here. If I was faster with these, that means I was more efficient in my stroke. And you saw that most of my stroke rates, in terms of strokes per length, were not exactly the same. 9, 8, 10, all around the same. And with these, I think I was more efficient. So a more efficient stroke, getting that into your muscle memory, must be good. I might come back to those in the future, but at the moment, of all these three, the agility paddle is the one I'd probably use the most. There you go. That's all for this week. Hopefully something different next week. It's going to get cold this weekend. Nasty. Winter's coming. Keep well. Happy training.